Okay, perfect. So we have about one more minute till we go
Oh,
live.
you can see me?
Yep,
Okay, cool.
yep, I can. I can absolutely see you. So that's Fancy who just joined us.
How do I get rid of this comments?
Yes, your boys are on. I see Ryan.
Great.
I love it. I love it. It's just about 6:30. Well, it's 6:30, so we're going to get started. I am super excited to be here to represent the October Group. My name is Felicia Hillman. I'm the founder of the October Group. I am a fourth generation entrepreneur. My grandparents own their own farm. My grandmother had a flower shop on the south side of Chicago. My mom is a therapist, and I now have my own business. So I'm super excited about being here and so grateful that Brian decided to join me. Brian's the Chief Growth Officer at Gunnison. We've worked together for the last few years, and he's been gracious enough to be my first host. So I'm super excited. And with that, I would love for you to introduce yourself,
Yeah,
Brian.
thanks, Felicia. This is an Instagram rookie moment for me. I just installed this, so hopefully this is going okay. But yeah, appreciate the intro. I'm serve as Chief Growth Officer for Gunnison Consulting, mid-market, emerging large business in the government contracting space. I've been in the industry probably for just about over 30 years. It's all the gray hair, but yeah, both commercial and government. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We've worked together long enough. You know, I cannot start a meeting with some kind of connection or icebreaker. So, want you to share what's a fun fact or unique experience that you've had over your leadership that shapes your approach to how you lead?
Yeah, and I know other people have heard this, and they probably get sick of me telling this story. But I've been a football coach for years. All three of my kids played football throughout youth and high school. I got kind of caught up in the bug of youth football. I've coached at the youth levels, middle school, high school, and it actually is kind of interesting that a lot of what I learned through coaching, I actually applied to business. It's you always hear embrace the process, and that's something that I've really taken into the business in my professional world. It's not just the outcome, but it's actually the whole process of building something and trying to approach on how you continue to grow in that capacity.
I love that. And I know coaching is dear to your heart. And I see how you bring that into your own leadership often. And I guess since I asked you to do it, I should also share. I think one of the things that's always been dear to my heart is my parents never allowed us to say we could not do something. They were like, figure it out. How do you get in that room? How do you navigate that thing? So, no to me is generally like, okay, not yet.
Yeah.
So just being curious and figuring out how do I navigate around something has always been a part of how I lead, and I think has been why I've been able to do consulting because I'm just curious about things and ask the right questions to engender that. So thank you for sharing that. Want to jump in and ask you a question about reflecting across your leadership journey. What specific moment were you like, leadership is connected to growth? How I lead helps us meet the performance that we want to go after.
One of the things early in my career, I worked for a software company, and it was a consulting organization as part of the software company. I was the Monday through Friday traveling consultant, doing
Mm.
business intelligence data warehouse implementations at banks and insurance companies and everything. And so I was always out in the field. It's probably about, I don't know, 9 months after college, I was happened to be in the local office, and the CEO of that company, who I'd met maybe twice, kind of stopped me in the hallway and said, "Hey, I heard you were doing a really good job out there." And I was kind of floored, and I'm walking away all charged up and ready to conquer the world. But I didn't realize it at the time. And looking back, after kind of in different managerial positions, that employee recognition, it just got me so engaged with the company and ready to conquer the world. So I look back at that for sure as something that kind of grounded. That's 31 years ago, and that's still stuck.
Mm,
I literally can remember hearing him say that. So that's always stuck with me. I think the other thing, same company, this was probably a year into my job from college, was just the strategic direction and strategic planning aspects of it. And one of our SVPs sat down with our consulting group and walked through, line by line of the overall strategic plan. And it was so eye opening to me because I was so like in the weeds, blinders on, doing, implementations and projects. And it was great for me to take a step back and see where I fit in with
mm,
the overall strategic plan.
mhm.
I really think it just helped drive, alignment, right? So everything I was doing out in the field, I wanted to make sure was aligned with that overall strategic direction. So it's probably those two things. And again, that was 30 some years ago, and that's all those. Both of those have really stuck with me throughout my career.
I appreciate that and wanna go a little deeper on both of those. Let's start with recognition. It's been a part of what you've sown into your leadership. When you think about recognition now, most of us are hybrid or virtual, see each other. How do you, particularly in the high pace of growth, how do you recognize your team?
Yeah, I mean, we try to do the attaboys all the time, right? If we have a small victory, if we have a big victory, it's definitely public recognition, right? Getting that out, to that person's peers and et cetera. We'll do social get-togethers, win parties if we have a big contract win for sure. But really, it's just the day-to-day kind of interaction with people, like just kind of, hey, I really appreciate you pulling that together. It doesn't go unnoticed, and I think that just goes a long way. One of the things I'm sure you're very familiar with the Good to Great, book and everything, and it talks about the mirror and the window leadership and everything. And I really try to, as much as possible, kind of take that to heart. And it's
Mm,
really kind of
mhm.
when things aren't going well, you're looking in the mirror at yourself and what can I do better? When things are going well, you're not looking in the mirror, you're looking through the window. So constantly trying to do that in various capacities. So,
Yeah, I love that. And a lot of times when I'm coaching is like when it's going well, you go to the team and say thank you. When it's not,
yep,
you go to the mirror, right? Like what am I doing as the
yep,
leader to see what's happening there? And I really appreciate you said, what you're talking about is moments matter.
yep.
Right in the moment saying, I appreciate what you did goes a long way. And as we know in this climate, people need to be seen. They need to be seen and heard. So I love
One
that.
of the things too, though, is like it, we always have to remind ourselves to continue to do that too, because we get so lost in in the day to day in the weeds and everything. It's like, hey, we need to continue to focus on recognition because it does mean a lot. It results in a whole lot more of an engaged employee, and when you have engaged employees, you're going to have growth. Growth is going to come with it. So,
Yeah, so practice of gratitude, the
yep,
practice of
yep.
gratitude. Second thing you mentioned that influenced you was strategy. How do you make sure your growth team, which again, growth is a hard, how do you make sure they're connected and stay connected to the larger Gunnison strategy?
Yeah, I mean, we try to have, strategic planning sessions, at the kickoff of the year and kind of lay out our initiatives and what we're trying to accomplish and how we're going to get there. But, throughout the year, you're going to have course corrections. You're going to tweak things. You're going to constantly meet things. I think, communication, absolutely. You got to continue to remind everyone, kind of here's what we're trying to do, right? And everybody will laugh at me if they've ever worked with me. They hear me all the time saying, "Hey, time out. Let's take a step back. Let's take a step back and kind of what we're trying to accomplish here." Because I think you tend to get so lost in the shuffle and you kind of lose sight into what we're trying to achieve long term. What's the strategic vision? So it's just constant communication, course correction, as the year goes on, things like that.
What do you think it is that causes people not to just naturally take that step back, where you as a leader have to remind people like, wait a second. So what do you think's happening where people just don't naturally step back reshift and
Yeah,
go.
I think I rewind back to when I was doing consulting, right? It's like I'm so consumed with my individual task that I kind of lose sight into where that individual task fits in.
Hmm.
And that's obviously the closest thing to you is that individual task. So I think it sometimes
Mm-hmm.
takes a, hey, let's reset, let's take a step back type thing. I just think it's a natural tendency to get focused on the day to day type activities. And I'm guilty of it as well. You're kind of in the grind and everything, and I got to remind myself as well is, hey, take a step back. Let's see kind of the roadmap that we're on. So
Yeah. And how receptive is your team? Because I know
yeah,
traditionally, stereotypically, growth folks are like, don't tell me to step back. I want to
yeah.
charge forward. So how receptive
No, I
is
mean,
your team to that?
I think when I mention it, if you hear me say take a step back, I think everyone's like, all right, yeah, you're right. Let's kind of recalibrate and kind of figure out what we're trying to do here. But hey, I'm just as guilty of it as well. Like you're in the grind, and I need somebody else to remind me too. Let's kind of make sure we're pointed in the right direction, and we're not just getting lost in the weeds. So
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I love that. So uh, recognition and strategy, key to growth.
yeah.
Those are two things I've heard you say. We also know that organizations that do well, really, when it comes to strong leadership, they're just 30% likely to do much better. So when you step back and think about yourself, and then the second part I'm going to say is the Gunnison team,
Mhm.
what would you say? How do you guys harness this potential? Because clearly, I've been watching you all on social media. You are on a nice winning streak.
Yeah.
Congratulations
Thank
to
you.
that.
Thank you.
Love seeing that. So, how are you all harnessing this potential?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I really try to focus on four things I'm bringing to the table, right? Coaching skills. I mean, you heard me mention coaching earlier on. I think I love hearing great stories about great coaches because at the end of the day, great coaches are great leaders.
Mhm.
They're really teachers at heart, right?
Mhm.
And kind of helping kind of get the best out of people. So I think that's number one. Communication skills, like I mentioned before. I think great leaders are able to simplify things. It's complicated, right? There's so many moving parts, and I mentioned at times that you'll hear me, hey, time out, let's take a step back. It's really to kind of continue to simplify things. I'm a firm believer if you can take a larger problem, break it up into smaller chunks and
Mhm.
simplify it, you're going to eventually kind of solve that problem. So that's probably the second thing. Employee engagement we talked about before. I think engaged employees are absolutely key. I think at Gunnison we actually put a lot of focus in that. We do engagement surveys. We're doing committees. Kind of focus groups. Things we can improve. Whether it's benefits, for the employee? Is it the way we're approaching something? Is it new solutions? Is it whatever it is? Training, things that the employee can get out. And then we're actually trying to take that feedback and have actions, around that feedback. It's not just one of these things where, it's done and we just file it, in a filing cabinet and let it sit. We actually have created a lot of things and kind of improved things. I think the last thing, the strategic planning, like I mentioned again, you really need to establish that vision and the roadmap to get everybody aligned. I think alignment is the biggest thing to come out of that strategic planning. That's a word that you'll hear constantly throughout Gunnison. We want to make sure we're all aligned on what we're trying to accomplish, what the standards are, what we're about, our core values, things like that. I mean, one of the things you'll hear all the time at Gunnison is let's be customer obsessed,
Ah,
right? Let's be obsessed with our
yeah.
customers' problems and trying to solve our customers' problems. And that is something, an anchor that we're trying to align everybody with. So strategic planning and alignment for sure is probably one of the big things.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. There's a few things you said, not just coaching, but
Mm-hmm.
teaching, right? Like, how do we do that? Making the complex more simple, just helping everybody like break it down. The engagement, and you mentioned several things that you all do around engagement. And one of the things I really appreciated is it's not top down, it's surveys. And then you had the most important part, and we respond to the survey.
Yep.
Because you and I both know it's the worst. Oh, we did a survey, and then everybody's like, well, what happened? right?
Well,
It
it's
all of a sudden,
funny because when I started at Gunnison, Gil, our CEO, we had this engagement survey, and I was totally expecting it just to be a half-hour meeting where we kind of gloss over and jump to the next topic. I mean, we spent hours kind of probing different comments, looking at different things, debating kind of, hey, let's treat that seriously. Here's something that we can do. And I look back at a lot of the initiatives that we've done over the years, and a lot of it ties directly to those engagement surveys. So that's been good to see. I'm really proud of us for doing that.
I have to ask you this as the growth guy, you're spending a half an hour going deep in surveys. What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, like some of it you get defensive a little bit, right? Like you're looking at it going, "Oh, come on!" Like whatever. But then you realize it's like, okay, we're not doing a good job of either communicating what we're trying to
Mm,
do or how we're approaching it things. So let's double down and engage better, right? Let's bring the employees in as part of the process. And again, I rewind 30 years ago when that SVP, and I'm a year out of college,
mhm,
and that SVP is sitting down with me and a few other fresh college grads and like getting our thoughts on the strategic plan and where we fit in. And I'm like, geez, I don't know. A year ago, I was barely able to, get to class, let alone help with a strategic plan. So that's always stuck with me. And it's something that's kind of anchored me for sure.
I love that. And again, I think alignment is the most
Yeah.
important thing. And I think the leadership team being in alignment is the secret sauce. Because once that happens, you get to cascade alignment. If you could think of one thing across the Gunnison team, thinking about just now your peer group, what's the one thing that you all do to make sure you stick to alignment?
We actually have a meeting called alignment meetings. It's surprising, right? Our executive team on a monthly basis, we have our normal monthly operating reviews, and we have a session right after that is titled alignment session. And it's one of these things where we're kind of reminding ourselves what we're trying to accomplish. We're going through the status of different initiatives, and kind of recalibrating, making sure we're aligned. And one of the things too, I think with alignment doesn't necessarily mean agreement. It means you're bought in, right? Like, hey, I may somewhat disagree with the exact approach, but at the end of the day, I'm in, right? We're gonna align to that direction. We're gonna align to that path because I feel it's important for us to approach it as a team together, and that's the direction we're gonna push on a certain initiative in our company, something
Yeah.
like that. So that's all kind of struck me too, that it's not necessarily violent agreement, right? We're gonna debate it. We're gonna try to come to a conclusion of what the best approach is, and at the end of the day, us on our executive team, we're all going to be bought in that that's the direction we're going to go together. So.
Yeah. Can I think when you and I are saying alignment, we get it, right?
Mhm.
It's one of the things that's just part of the core packaging of what the October group works really hard with the executive teams to do. Your experience in it. And ironically, I think it's sometimes easier for people to hear a story when it's not. Can you just think over your career and tell a story when you were like, we were misaligned and the result was this?
Yeah, I look back at a company that I used to work for years ago, and it was one of these where, yeah, I'm a big fan of in a professional services organization being consultants versus contractors. Consultants are looking at a company's overall mission and what we're trying to accomplish, or what that customer is trying to accomplish, and make sure everything we're doing is aligned with that
Mm-hmm.
mission. Contractor, you're not really presenting me a problem. Your problem is already kind of defined. You kind of already have an idea how you're going to solve that problem, and you're just trying to hire the company to basically provide manpower
Mm-hmm.
to execute on that. Consultants is a little bit
Mm-hmm.
higher level of thinking. I look back at that company, and I think we were misaligned on what we wanted to be and what we thought we were about. I had the bias of, hey, I want to be consultants. I want to solve customers' problems, very value add, and others kind of was probably more. And I think part of it is in the government contracting space. It almost kind of builds companies up to be contractors
Mm-hmm.
versus consultants. And there's just a key misalignment there. And I think it caused problems as we try to implement our strategic plan. At the core, we just weren't aligned with it. So I look back, and that's probably, it kind of further cemented my kind of thoughts about alignment, that you really got to have alignment before you can actually proceed.
And what was the cost of that misalignment when you look back on it?
We didn't grow as probably as well as we should have. You end up having probably disengaged employees. It
Mm.
ties right back to engagement. And especially if it's a leadership team that's not aligned, your employees see it, right? If you don't see a very aligned management team, your employees aren't going to be as engaged as they should be. So.
What I'm curious that you used the word the difference between contractor
Mhm.
and clients and customers, and you talked about Gunnison being customer obsessed. How would you describe Gunnison? Where would you along that
It's been
continuum?
a journey with that. I think Gunnison, the legacy Gunnison's 30-year-old company. When it was a small business, it was a model of, hey, let's do really great work for clients, and we'll grow with that. Do one project for a client, we'll do 10 more projects for that client. At some point, that client needs to expand into other
Uh,
clients and new clients and things like that. And in order for that to happen, you really got to understand what that client's trying to do and what they're trying to achieve, and the overall mission. It can't be, hey, we have a widget that we built, and of course it's going to fit into every single client. We got to adapt that widget to what the client's trying to do. So I think that's been a journey that we've been on for the last 4 or 5 years, and I think we will continue to grow with that. And at the end of the day, it's truly, truly trying to understand what that customer is doing. We use the word worry transfer a lot.
mm,
Um, Kind of what that means is, hey, you as the client have a ton of worries. I want to be able to get to the point where you can transfer some of those worries to us. So what that really means is I need to understand. I need to understand
yeah,
what your worries
yeah.
are, and kind of the problem sets that you're trying to, solve and everything.
Yeah, you don't get to transfer worry unless I trust
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and you always hear in that the permission to win, right? That's what we're driving towards, right? Is the permission to win, the permission to solve that customer's problem. If I don't really listen to you and I don't really kind of understand what you're trying to accomplish, I'm never going to get that permission to win. I look back, and I'll tell another story. This was probably about 4 or 5 years into my career, and I was starting to get a little cocky. Hey, I know a lot, right? I'm kind of becoming an expert in this field. And a sales manager asked me to attend the session he was doing at an insurance company in Ohio. And he's like, hey, I'm going to have a group of 20. I need you to kind of hear what they're trying to accomplish and kind of give you your thoughts and your expertise on how you would approach it. I concluded or started that meeting, and I think I probably was the only one that talked for 45 minutes. And all I did was just
Mm,
tell them, "Here's what you got to do. Here's and everything." And I'm walking out of the meeting with the sales manager, and the sales manager is saying that was awful, and I'm sitting there the entire time going, "I killed it, right?" Like the
mm,
clients love me and everything. He's like, "You didn't hear a single thing that they're trying to do. You don't understand what they're trying to accomplish. You came to already with a prescription on what needs to be fixed." And I think that really struck me. So that's kind of back to the permission to win. I never got that permission to win. I had no clue what that customer's trying to do. I just already had the prescription written out and delivered it. So
yeah, that is a great story about not just listening, but believing in our own hype.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you said, not I was telling them what they needed. It was great. I felt great when we walked out the
yeah,
room,
yeah,
and somebody's like, "Yeah, no, that sucked. You don't even know what you were doing."
yeah,
I love that story because it a lot of us that's what we do. Like, I got to tell them what they need to
yeah.
know, right?
I'm the
And we don't even
consultant.
really
I'm the expert. That's why I'm here, right?
right. That's why you called me, isn't it? So just let me do it. Thank you. That was great. Um, what is, and this might be difficult because you've mentioned it several, but in what's like one leadership trait that you consistently see correlating to growth? Like every time we win, this element is there.
Yeah, again, I hate to continue to tap on it, but it really is understanding what the customer is trying to achieve. I mean, I think if you can, the leadership around kind of harnessing that and really driving towards that, that's absolutely gonna, bring you growth. So it's really probably that ultimately is, the key thing.
So I'm gonna get a little spicy here. So whose job is it to really know what the customer wants? Because you have a growth team who's not on
Yeah.
site, then you have the project manager who's on site. So how do you help get that
So
understanding?
this is funny because um, it is everybody's job, right? It's not just a growth team or a sales team, and that's part of like even if you hear the word or the title chief growth officer, it's not chief sales
Ah,
officer, right? It's not chief business development officer. It's chief growth officer, and growth spans a whole lot more than just in the government contracting space, writing a good proposal and having a good sales call. It's capability. It's bringing technology, in our space, bringing technology talent to the table that's going to help solve that problem. It's bringing innovation. It's trying to leverage what we've done at other projects and bring that to the table for that customer. It's trying to build a practice of capability that we have in our company and harness that for that particular client. So it's not, hey, let me wow them with a great sales call. At the end of the day, it's everybody's employee or everybody's job for growth. I think one of the things we've done at Gunnison, we actually have a internal system that tracks growth activities, and this was part of what we did kind of early on when I joined the company is educating people on what growth means. That
ah,
it's getting a certification if you're a consultant out in the field. It's attending a user group and being a participant in that. It's working in our lab trying to develop new accelerators or new solutions for clients that we may be able to deploy to the market. It's not just, hey, participate in this proposal or we have this sales call coming up with this particular client. So we actually developed an internal system that everybody can track that feeds into their performance reviews at the end of the year. And it's really kind of their area to brag and document, hey, here's everything I've done related to growth. And it actually probably has nothing to do with writing a proposal at the end of the day. So I think part of it is changing the culture and the understanding
mm,
across companies on what growth means, right?
mm-hmm,
It's not
mm-hmm.
just the four-letter word, sales and that sort of thing, that it's everybody's job.
I so appreciate how you've talked about it's not just it first of all, it's not a sales call.
Yeah.
You mentioned innovation, you mentioned it's everybody's job, you mentioned it's technology, you mentioned it's the relationship between the PM and the growth person. It's like it's this like ecosystem
Yep.
that has to happen to do it. And again, you all are on a winning streak, so clearly your ecosystem is working well. It's working well. So super excited about that. Um, if you were if you were just met somebody who walked into your industry and said, I'm straight out of college and I want to be, my obsession is to be a chief growth officer. What would be your best advice right now?
Yeah, I actually had a lunch a few weeks back. Somebody was asking me that very thing. He was coming from the financial, sector and industry, and kind of pay his role or kind of desire was to be a chief growth officer. I think it's understanding all of the different components that feed into growth, whether it's in our industry, pricing for sure. If I'm coming from a financial background, maybe I have a financial degree, understanding kind of how the dynamics of pricing works for the federal contracting world. But then everything for market, like again, in the government contracting, how does government procure work? How do it's a formal RFP process, how does that whole cycle work? What are all the different levers and things you need to be worried about? Understanding the proposal function. If you look at the government sales cycle, it's kind of the front end marketing piece. It's the market intel and the account knowledge and understanding what that agency is trying to do. It's the solution side, and you're bringing the solutions to the table and kind of what we're trying to propose to the client. It's actually trying to get meetings with the customer to articulate kind of what we're trying to do or how we can solve their problem, understand their problem. And at the end, it results in some type of formal RFP that we have to respond to. So in our space, it's understanding each of those functions.
Mm,
And what I would recommend if somebody's getting involved in that is to probably start with one of those functions, have some expertise in one of those functions, but then keep an open, eye towards how all of the pieces fit together. I look at my own kind of history on how I became a CGO. It was
mm.
really through the delivery angle, right? It actually, I was not a salesperson with a quota early in my career. I was a consultant, I was a project manager, then I started doing more engagement managers. Then you start to see how it all fits in the overall growth of a business and you just start to learn. So that's what I would recommend is just understanding the different functions that are associated with a government procurement.
Now I'm curious that I don't think I knew that part about you. What made you switch starting from delivery? What
Yeah.
attracted you to come over to growth?
Yeah, it's funny. I was an engineer, computer science degree out of UVA, and I got to UVA and I thought I was super smart, super technical, and then you look around and I'm like, wow, everybody's a whole lot more technical and smarter than me. But I've always been interested in the business aspects of it. So I think I've always gravitated towards that. And, early in my career, especially like kind of seeing how that business got built that I first started with out of my career and the business side of it and the growth and everything, I just became fascinated with it. And that's kind of
Ah,
how I gravitated. I think the good thing though is because I started my career in the delivery side and the technical side and the project management side, it really kind of anchored a lot of the way I approach problem solving for clients. So that
mm.
that is the ingredient that has to be there for sales to happen. So yeah.
I love that. Do you see it giving you more credibility with delivery folks when you're like,
I
I
think
used to be.
so. It's been a long time since I've actually delivered. It's funny. We have a project right now that we've been meeting with the client, and I've been actually able to dust off my data warehouse days and provide a little bit of knowledge that the little knowledge I have left over to the table. So I've actually played the role of a solution architect to some degree. So probably not a good one, but I've at least tried. So.
I I I I like that, and I want to talk about a little bit about that the complexity of leadership. It is, you know, I've been saying this a lot lately, and I really mean it. And I can't even remember where I first heard it, but leadership is not a position; it is a
Yep.
practice. People do not follow you because you have a chief title. We don't, that's not what we
Yeah.
follow these days. We follow purpose, we follow meaning, we follow trust, we follow opportunity. There's so many different things. So would love for you to talk a little bit about your perspective because what I heard you say, I rolled up my sleeves and now I'm
Mhm.
playing, this other role. So talk about leading up and maybe sometimes having to lead in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, you hear all the working in the company versus working on the company and everything. I think as leaders, you got to understand when you got to do both, right? Like, and what the company needs. There are times where I have to work in the company, right? I got to roll up my sleeves and I'm helping a red team on a proposal, or I'm helping writing content on a proposal, or whatever it is. Then there are times where, hey, I got to take a step back, work on the company, right? And where's the company? More of a longer term kind of outward facing type thing for the company. So I think that's absolutely important to understand kind of how you fit in with the company. I think it also demonstrates, hey, I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves just like the rest of them, right? And actually get real work done. So that's definitely an approach I try to take throughout my work here at Gunnison.
How do you think that builds your credibility as a leader? People seeing you like, when it's a proposal, you can be on a
Yep.
Sunday, a Saturday, late at night how do you think that builds your credibility as a
I
leader?
think it does. I think one of the things too, I try to make sure, and that this kind of is something that I've always thought is like good leaders are vulnerable and honest, right?
Mhm.
And I think it builds trust with the people you work with and they work for you and things like that. So if I am kind of, you know, telling somebody, hey, I don't really totally understand this, or I'm a little bit, vulnerable and open. I think it builds a little bit better of a connection with your employees, right? Those employees trust that, hey, you got the best interests of the company, the best interests of the employee at heart, things like that. So I think that's absolutely key. Yeah, for sure.
Because you're the chief growth officer, and I rarely hear chief growth officer use the V word, vulnerability. And I appreciate that. I really love it. Can you just share a story where sharing either I don't know or being vulnerable helped lead you to a win?
Yeah, like one of the I look back at a previous company, and we were in one of these strategic planning sessions, and I just I forgot what topic we were drilling into, but it was one of these things where we just weren't getting anywhere, and I could feel people getting frustrated. And I was just kind of like, hey, look, I'm just as frustrated as you, and I don't really know the direction we're going to take this, right? So
Mm,
like, let's admit that right from the start that I'm feeling the same way you are, right? And it was kind of almost like affirmation that oh yeah, okay, our VP here is kind of feeling the same way, and it was a better connection. And we got through the problem and got through the discussion. But yeah, I look back and it's more of like I'm the same seat at the table that everybody else is. It's not, oh,
mm.
I'm the CGO, I'm actually right there. It's the same seat at the table. We all have opinions on how this needs to be taken. So
And that's a beautiful example of leadership as a practice. As soon as you said, listen, I don't know, everybody's probably
yeah,
like, "Phew,"
I
then
know,
I don't have to
right?
know either, right? If you don't know, I don't have to know either. And then now we can discover together.
Yeah. And it's funny, I think it was my fourth grade English teacher always said something better a fool for a minute than a fool forever. So, like, if you don't know something, ask a question or admit you don't know something. And I think you automatically build credibility and everybody's more comfortable that way. So,
Good. What do you see? And I know we're wrapping up in a little bit here, but what do you see now as leaders are looking at, particularly those responsible for growth? What are you seeing that you're going to have to be paying attention to even more as we move into 2025?
yeah, I mean, in our space, the sales cycle and the pace of growth is just very slow
Mm,
right now. And what
mm,
I mean by that is, in our sector, the government contracting, it takes a whole lot longer to have a procurement come out where we're bidding on something and it get awarded. Protests are, a fact of life for us in the government sector. If a contract gets awarded, you really haven't won it until you get through the protest, because there's always going to be some type of issue. Someone claims, that, hey, this wasn't evaluated correctly, and then the government's potentially has to go back to the drawing board. And then you have another 6 to 8 months. So I think for us, that's the reality of our business, and it's balancing the, hey, we're going to be really strategic and go after a few opportunities versus we're going to bid and go after a lot of opportunities and have a lot of volume
mm,
activity,
mm.
a lot of proposal activity. That's probably not the best on this side of the spectrum. That's probably not the best solution. And it's probably not the best solution just to focus on just a few. It's somewhere in between. But where is that somewhere in between that's our sweet spot? And that's kind of been a reality of our business for probably at least the last 5 years, and it's not going to change. So that's something we've really tried to zero in on. And I think part of it is like, what are the things we really do well, and what are the
Mm,
things we really can
mm.
accomplish and solve for our customers, and then finding that sweet spot. So that's what we were spending a lot of time on.
So I'm hearing you say, no, bid, baby, bid. Like just
Yeah.
keep putting them in the machine. And you can't just say, oh, we're only going to do these few.
Yep.
So there's a sweet
And
spot.
I think every company's probably battling that to some degree, right?
Sure.
Especially if you're not a $5 billion system integrator, and your bid spectrum is pretty huge because you can bid on a lot of things. Even though we're a large company, we only have a certain set of capabilities and things like that. So we got to be real strategic on what we bid.
Nice. I know unconstrained thinking is
Yep.
one of the core values at Gunnison. So when you're thinking about that sweet spot, as the chief growth officer, how are you helping that bubble up with your team?
Yeah, unconstrained thinking is a core value that we try to employ throughout Gunnison, and a lot of it is on the capability side. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out what if we've deployed something at one particular client, or we have this capability, how can we leverage that to help a customer solve a different problem? So, for example, we are a large cybersecurity. We have a large cybersecurity capability. We also have large digital services, lots of AI, things like that. One of the things we're really trying to work on is how can we take AI and leverage that to implement cybersecurity better
Mm,
at agencies. So really, it's kind of cross our different capability sets. The only way you really do that is you got to think outside of your individual project. You got to look holistically across all of our capability areas. You got to kind of break the barriers that are typically project barriers and have our employees kind of hit the whiteboard, try to figure out, try to innovate in what we can do in our lab to provide new solutions for customers to do. So that's a big focus of ours.
I like this, what you said about looking holistically across and going way back to what you said at the beginning. You really can't do that unless you're
Yeah,
aligned,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for
Like you
sure.
have to have one another to have the other. So it even if you attempt to look holistically across, it could be potentially so disjointed, you
Well,
know?
and one of the things too is again, you tend to have blinders on, and I'm worried about my client, I'm worried about my project and everything, and you don't realize that the project over there might probably is battling the same issue, and they may have a different approach or a different solution that we can
Yes.
leverage for that project, right? And also, we can leverage that and potentially help a net new client that has never worked with us. So, and again, that's the government contracting business. I think it tends to have everybody put blinders on versus build consulting practices and things like that. So we've spent a lot of time really trying to grow in that area.
I love that. And again, I can't keep saying it, you're on a winning streak. So whatever unconstrained thinking
Yeah.
you're having people do, it is working. So vulnerability, coaching, I've heard alignment. I've heard really things about engagement, knowing the difference of when you need to roll up your sleeves and get in the business versus step back, as you say, wait a minute, let's step back, let's take a step back and get on the business. What's been your biggest lesson of 2024?
2024, I think for me, it's patience.
Ah,
And honestly, I think me as a football coach, and this goes back to what I was talking about as a football coach before, you got to love the process, not just the outcome. And sometimes those outcomes are going to be, continue to get kicked to the right or delayed or whatever it is. So I think that's the lesson in 2024 is patience. I think looking in our rearview mirror, especially the 4 years I've been here, we're a drastically different company than we were 4 years ago in a lot of good ways. But it's so hard to recognize that when you're kind of in the thick of it and things like that. So again, if you take a step back and you look at it, we've made a lot of good progress. So that's kind of what I have to remind myself is we're always moving forward and to just have patience kind of with how we're going. So
listen, I'm so glad I had you as the first guest because between vulnerability and patience, these are not words you often hear chief
right,
growth officers talk
yeah,
about.
yeah.
So and the whole thing was to show how important leadership is in the skill of leadership, regardless of your role. So those two words alone have just brought me joy because you don't normally hear those. So that was your reflection for 2024. So, two more questions to ask you. So that's your hindsight. What are you worried about right now? I get the part that it's slow, but what's your situational awareness right now as a leader?
Yeah, I think for me, my key worry is continuing to get good talent into the company. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a challenge that all companies are facing right now is getting really good talent. And for me, I don't equate talent as somebody with a 30-year history of doing exactly what we need to do. I look at the intangibles. I look at problem solvers. I look at customer oriented. I look at somebody that's, persistent, adaptable, things like that. So that's probably the number one thing for us and for me is continuing to get key talent into the door. I think the other thing is retaining the talent that we have. We have a good team. We really have
Nice.
a good team, but it's continuing to challenge that team. I think, one of the things we spend a lot of time on, and you're probably familiar with the 9 box exercise and like
Yes, yes, yes,
really
yes.
challenging employees and drawing the
Nice.
potential out of them and everything. So putting them in positions that they really want to thrive, or they're going to be able to thrive in and kind of pull out that potential. So for us, it's getting talent in the door and retaining that talent.
Nice. Really quickly, so we got your hindsight, your situation, any visioning for 2025 outside of
Yeah,
patience?
yeah, patience, and just persistence. I think for us, that's 2025. I think for us, we have a little bit of momentum. This has been building, and for us heading into 2025, it's continuing to do what we're doing, embrace the process, and continue to push forward. Fast. So
Well, you clearly have a good formula going. Again, I am honored and grateful that you were my first guest and we laughed
somehow
about
I
this,
figured this
but it's
Instagram
it's
out.
time. Our
I
time
got a
is up
brand
and
new
we did
account
it.
that I got probably 3 followers at this point, but yeah,
Perfect. And we will continue to do this October, continue to do this. So I hope when I ask you to come back again, you will. We would love
absolutely
to hear what happens with your vision for 2025. And again, thank you so much. And Gunnison team, thank you for lending me Brian to do this. It's been great. Appreciate you so much.
awesome.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye bye.